Melania Trump, his wife, they have been gathering for one of these moments that we see on inauguration days here at the White House. And soon, those two will also be getting into a car together and making that trip just a couple of miles down to the U.S. Capitol, where the rest of the official swearing in for Donald Trump's inauguration will be happening on this Monday, January 20th, here in Washington, D.C. So we're looking at those doors, waiting to see who's coming out next. Sagar, we can spend this moment, I guess, just to kind of talk a little bit about this last day in office for the Bidens, not just as an administration, but as a family. They have been living in the White House for 4 years. And once they leave here in just a few minutes, that move-out process really kicks in to do that turnover in between administrations. There's really only about 5 or 6 hours to get it all done. What all is going to be happening once they exit those doors?
Yeah, it is a fascinating choreography that takes place right now at the White House. We're looking at the North Portico. Well, they arrived and they'll be leaving. On the other side of the White House, there are moving trucks lined up that will be waved in the instant that the Bidens and the Trumps leave. One group will be moving all the Biden stuff out. One group will be moving all the Trump stuff in. In between, stripping all the beds, shampooing the carpets, replacing what needs to be replaced. Linens, towels, whatever it might be. Closets stocked. The White House usher's office would have been in touch with the Trumps for the last few months about where certain things go, what are the favorite foods and snacks that we need to have in the various kitchens, in the residence, and elsewhere. We know all about Donald Trump and his penchant for Diet Cokes. You can rest assured that there is a lot of Diet Coke on hand, at least on the White House driveway right now. So, yeah, they've got about 4 or 5 hours of controlled chaos, as one former White House official put it, to get all the old First Family stuff out and make sure that when the new First Family comes in, they're good to go. They're not having to root through boxes like the rest of us when we move into a new place and, you know, where is that stuff for the kitchen, or where did we put the bike pump, whatever it is. That's all laid out in the mansion. Donald Trump's not going to have to be looking for any of that.
Yeah, moving day is always a stressful time. Try not to think about that, because it's just, you're living in those boxes for months, but not when you're living in the White House, because there are plenty of folks to take care of that.
And then there's the personal part of just leaving where you've lived for 4 years, a place that in Joe Biden's case, he tried so hard for so long to get into, and now has to leave 4 years later. And on his, perhaps his final tweet under the @POTUS account on X, it's a selfie with the president and the first lady with a snow-covered rose garden behind them in the Oval Office just on the other side. One more selfie for the road. We love you, America. So you can almost picture them stepping out onto the colonnade on this horribly cold D.C. day to say, hey, let's take a quick selfie. I mean, I've done that, walking along that when we're, you know, out covering White House events. But for the president and first lady to get to do that one last time, because as you said, when those doors open again and they walk out, that's it. They're boarding what would be known as Marine One and heading out. And that is the end of the Biden presidency.
Yeah, it's just so interesting to think about, you know, what you were just mentioning about that personal side of things. What we're watching are all of these official events, and what we know always is part of the tick-tock of a day, like Inauguration Day. There are set pieces. There are even specific times assigned to a lot of this, especially that noon time when it is according to the way that things are set out. You know, it's not just we picked this time. It's like that is the official time. Now we're seeing those doors at the North Portico of the White House open again. We see First Lady Jill Biden and incoming First Lady Melania Trump exiting and getting into their own limousine, where they will be taken over to the U.S. Capitol. As we think about these situations, Sagar, you know, we have talked a little bit about the outgoing president and the incoming president and kind of what they might share in casual conversation. But this is also a first lady who's been here before. Melania Trump has been in the White House and has occupied that role. And I wonder kind of, she's at the end of this next term, she will have been first lady for longer than Jill Biden was. She will have more experience, but I just wonder what their conversations are like too, in terms of what they hope to accomplish or what Melania is thinking about in this next 4 years.
And Melania recently told Fox that it's easier this time around. She's lived there. She knows what the space is like. She knows what they want. She knows which furniture they want to bring in. The incoming first family gets to redecorate the residence with things pulled from White House stocks and bring things from home that are sentimental or what have you. And she said, since we've been here, and I know what it looks like, we were kind of coming in blind last time, although Michelle Obama did invite her into the residence and gave her the tour 8 years ago. Again, a courtesy that Melania Trump did not extend Jill Biden 4 years ago. But she didn't need that this time. And in fact, she skipped Donald Trump's visit here after the election. She knew what it was about, and she knew what she was getting into, and she seemed visibly more comfortable in this interview with the prospect of, moving away from Trump Tower and moving away from these big gilded residences that they have in Florida and elsewhere, and moving into the White House. And taking pains to note that Barron Trump will have a bedroom in the White House for when he comes home to visit from college. He's not the little kid he was during the first Trump administration. He's now about, I think, taller than his father. Now it's a little bit jarring to see, frankly.
He has definitely grown up and attending colleges in New York City. Now we see Vice President Kamala Harris and incoming Vice President J.D. Vance making their exit. Let's listen in as they depart for the U.S. Capitol.
Thank you, sir.
So there's just one pair left in terms of who we anticipate to be departing the White House and heading to the U.S. Capitol. That will be President Joe Biden and President-elect Donald Trump, who will be getting into what you see there, that limousine that's pulling up here at the north portico of the White House to take them to the U.S. Capitol for Donald Trump's second inauguration.
President Biden confirmed as President-elect Trump arrived this morning that he did, in fact, continue a tradition dating back to Ronald Reagan, now in 1989, of leaving his successor a handwritten note inside the Oval Office. There had been a little bit of question about whether that was going to happen. Donald Trump left Joe Biden a note. Remember, he did not concede the race, still has not conceded it, but he did leave Joe Biden a note. President Biden has refused to divulge what was in that, except he called it shockingly gracious. And Trump himself said that he spent a few days mulling over what to put in it. So President Biden's not saying what is in the note, but he is now the first president to receive a note from the person for whom he then had to write a note. We're full of presidential history and tidbits today, and that's
absolutely. It's just one of the circumstances.
That's another one that wasn't on the list for this morning, but there it is.
Thank you for that. I guess I'm just a nerd, but I do really enjoy learning more about this presidential history. And this is one of those days where we all kind of get good reminders of a lot of different inauguration-related tidbits, particularly. So much rich history here.
We would note that when the Trumps arrived, President Biden made it a point to say, "Welcome home," to Donald Trump as they approach. So I think the facial expressions will tell us something when they walk out those doors. A lot of smiles and handshakes on the way in, and now the reality of making that final walk out that door and that trip to Capitol Hill.
It is kind of interesting to think about this in the context of what we just saw a few weeks ago with former President Jimmy Carter's funeral, where we had the current president and several former presidents and their wives in attendance, seated together, greeting each other kind of backstage before they all came out. And there's always a lot of armchair quarterbacking in terms of trying to figure out exactly what the mechanics are and if any of these folks get along. But as we know, there is the ex-president's club.
Attention!
Just try and catch her eye. Present arms!
Presidential Inaugural Committee. Committee Co-Chair, Mr. Steve Witkoff. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, please take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, former Vice Presidents, the Honorable Dan Quayle, accompanied by Mrs. Marilyn Quayle, and the Honorable Michael Pence. Ladies and gentlemen, the 42nd President of the United States, the Honorable William J. Clinton, accompanied by the Honorable Hillary Rodham Clinton. Ladies and gentlemen, the 43rd President of the United States, the Honorable George W. Bush, accompanied by Mrs. Laura Bush. Ladies and gentlemen, the 44th President of the United States, the Honorable Barack H. Obama. Ladies and gentlemen, the Chief Justice of the United States, the Honorable John G. Roberts, Jr., and the Associate Justices of the Supreme Court of the United States. Tiffany Trump and Barron Trump. Ladies and gentlemen, escorting Dr. Biden and Mr. Emhoff, the Republican Staff Director of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Ms. Emily Leviner, the Senate Secretary for the Minority, the Honorable Gary Myrick, the House of Representatives Chief Administrative Officer, the Honorable Catherine Spindor, and Mr. Bruce Fisher. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Jill Biden and Mr. Douglas Emhoff. Ladies and gentlemen, performing O America, please welcome the Armed Forces Chorus and America's tenor, Christopher D. Macchio. Ladies and gentlemen, escorting the President of the United States and the Vice President of the United States, Ranking Member of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Deb Fischer, House Democratic Leader, the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries, and Senate Majority Secretary, the Honorable Robert Duncan. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, the Honorable Joseph R. Biden, Jr., and Vice President of the United States, the Honorable Kamala Devi Harris. Ladies and gentlemen, escorting the Vice President-elect, the Executive Director for the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Mr. Michael Wagner, Senate Deputy Sergeant-at-Arms and Doorkeeper, Jason Bell, and House Deputy Sergeant-at-Arms, Mr. Sean Keating. Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President-elect of the United States, the Honorable J.D. Vance. Ladies and gentlemen, escorting the President-elect, the Staff Director for the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Elizabeth Farah, House Sergeant-at-Arms, the Honorable William P. McFarland, Senate Sergeant-at-Arms and Doorkeeper, the Honorable Jennifer A. Hemingway, Senate Majority Leader, the Honorable John Thune, and the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, House Democratic Leader, the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries, House Majority Leader, the Honorable Steve Scalise, Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Mike Johnson, Senate Democratic Leader, the Honorable Charles E. Schumer, Ranking Member of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Deb Fischer, and Chairwoman of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Amy Klobuchar. Ladies and gentlemen, the President-elect of the United States, the Honorable Donald John Trump.